I'm delighted to present today what's the life of a new data engineer using AI. I'm Cyril Sonnefraud. I'm Principal Product Manager working at Matillion and in charge of Maia. And today I'm working with Julian.
Yeah, I'm Matillion's Chief of AI and Data Science. And together we've been working on Maia and its antecedent Copilot for about 2.5 years now. And we'd like to show you the vision of the future that it represents. So let us introduce you to our data engineer, Sam. Unlike earlier in her career, Sam got a good night's sleep last night. She wasn't up late fixing breaking pipelines, despite the fact that somebody once again messed around with something upstream, removed a few columns, tweaked around with a few things, and otherwise caused a few alarm bells to go off when pipelines started failing all over the place. Fortunately, Maia is Sam's friend and assistant, and really enabled her to quickly diagnose the root of the problem in a way that she could get back to bed without losing more than a minute or two. How does this kind of work?
So we're now in a world where data engineering works in conjunction with AI. And at Matillion, we've been developing Data Productivity Cloud, which is a platform that helps integrate data. And we've been working over the last months with Julian on putting together Maia, which brings AI assistance to solve Sam's problem. When it comes to the operations of pipelines, the old school way to do that is to go through the logs, start to troubleshoot and understand what was the root cause as to why a data pipeline has failed. Before, it would be a very lengthy, sometimes a bit cumbersome task. You would have to spend lots of time to try to understand why a pipeline failed. But that's a problem that we're starting to solve with AI, because Maia can help spot exactly what was the issue, what was the root cause as to why the pipeline failed. And not only it can quickly go through the logs and understand the root cause, but it can also give you a hint as to what could be the fix so that you could sort the situation and hopefully get back to normal operations.
Yeah. Fortunately for Sam, Maia is a lot more diligent at reading the manual than most users and most data engineers actually are. Is able to get you to the heart of the errors quite quickly. So having fixed last night's problem, how does Sam's workday look? Relatively calm check-in. She works for a big multinational. I'm sure many folks here do. They have many teams working on pipelines and data transformations simultaneously. This requires the use of kind of Git managed repositories the same way that software dev teams do. The challenge we usually get with this is information sharing. Who's done what? Who's changed what? Who's documented pieces? We all know we should be diligent at documentation. I'm sure Sam aspires to, really, in her heart of hearts. But it's often dull as hell. Fortunately, machines don't get too bored. So Maia is very good at documenting in plain language the business intent of each pipeline, at generating good Git commit messages to explain the change that's been made. And when Sam wants to inspect a Git diff to compare, okay, what's been edited overnight by her colleagues, say in the US or Asia, on her core pipeline, she can see the diff, and then Maia can explain, again, in plain English, okay, this is the difference that this change is going to make to the way this pipeline behaves. Also acts as a really good sanity check when Sam's building her own pipelines, because Maia can play back to say, are you sure this is what you wanted to build? This is what it's doing in terms of business logic. So once again, having reviewed what her colleagues have been changing, Sam has some work to do. As ever, her dear beloved business stakeholders have given her tons of lead time and desperately need the new pricing report tomorrow. It's complex, it's messy, it involves a bunch of new sources. What we've been able to come up with here is a way that she can enter those requests not as a complex SQL query or a bunch of DBT or Python, but still put it in plain language, but then get that built out as transformations. However, done so in a way that's easy to inspect, easy to evaluate, easy to understand. So it's not just a bunch of vibe code, by putting it into a platform that actually allows you to see what Maia's done each step of the way.
So that's where Maia kicks in. So when it comes to putting together data pipelines, in the world of the future data engineer, you don't drag and drop components manually like you would do in classic ETLs. What you do is that you explain in plain English language what is the business outcome that you want, what is the kind of transformation that you would like to see built on the canvas. And that's exactly what we do with Maia. Using natural language, Maia is able to understand what you want to build. Maia knows inside out data engineering and the data transformations. So it's going to be able to pick the relevant components, and you're going to see on the screen the pipeline building up, new components being added as Maia increments the business logic and the integration logic in the pipeline. And it has many benefits. First benefit, you go much faster than before. Because if you think about putting together pipelines, not only takes time, but it also requires very advanced skills. You need to know your SQL, you need to know your Python, you need to be quite knowledgeable about the world of data and the technicalities around data. So Maia is really here to accelerate that process and improve the productivity because it goes so fast at creating the pipelines. All you have to do is to manage Maia at the end. You look at Maia creating the pipelines, and eventually you refine if there are some tweaks to be done on the pipeline.
Yeah.
Another important aspect is since natural language is the way to describe the data pipeline you want to implement, it means that more people can do it. It's self-service for everybody. At the end of the day, pretty much everyone is able to describe what would be the kind of integration that they want. That's likely to be the kind of ask that's coming from a business user. So it means that using AI and data engineering at the same time, we can empower more people to create more data pipelines.
And we see this having an impact on the teams of our customers using this already, that they're starting to find tasks that previously you would have given to a 2-3 year experienced dev can be given to a junior just starting out because they're holding their hands. And similarly, tasks that would have required a junior could be self-served by a business user in many ways.
And conversely, you see the data engineer using AI tools start to become pretty much a manager of virtual labor and a virtual data engineer in the form of Maia. So it's a great way to do more, faster, and with more control.
Yeah.
So if we open a little bit the hood of Maia and we talk about the so-called agentic architecture, that's how Maia is working. So at the top, you get a user of Data Productivity Cloud. So that's the name of our integration platform at Matillion. That's what DPC stands for. So that user is going to explain in plain English language what they want to do and what's the data pipeline that they want to build. The agentic architecture that we've been putting in place is an agentic architecture that knows inside out all the work that has to be done as part of the data team. And when you think about the data team, most of the time it's a collaboration. It's going to be work done maybe by a data engineer that's going to collaborate with a data analyst and maybe hand over to a data ops or a quality engineer and eventually operationalize things to production and hand over to an operations manager. So whenever you ask something to Maia, you actually have a virtual data team that's going to collaborate under the hood. So when you send a prompt, the data engineer agent is going to leverage some agentic tools which are actually mimicking some of the tasks that a human data engineer would do. For instance, Maia is going to start looking at the structure of the tables, looking at the metadata, start to understand a bit more what are the relationships between the objects. And that's how Maia is going to be able to understand a bit more how to transform the data and put it in the right shape and form so that the data is ready for the business. And there's going to be collaboration happening. So maybe Maia is going to act sometimes a little bit as a data analyst, looking at the quality of the data assets. Sometimes when the pipeline is in the right shape, Maia is going to ask you to commit it into a Git repository. So that commit phase is going to be automatically done, and Maia is going to generate the commit message. And at the end, Maia is also going to help you operationalize that pipeline so that it can be scheduled and running on a recurrent basis. So breadth and depth of capabilities as part of that.
A chunk of the tools here are also key to the success rate is that some of the tools here allow Maia to sample the outputs of the pipelines, the data, whether it's a transformation piece of SQL or a connection to another source, and or see the validation errors the same as the human user would. And just as the human user would, that's Maia sanity check its work. So if Maia builds out a pipeline that involves joining two tables together, and I've seen this happen in demos several times, it might see there's no data coming out the bottom of the pipeline down various filters and similar, and then work back up to the point where it realizes, oh, if I sample here, it's the join component where I start getting 0 rows. And at that point in this example was realized that the join needed to be case insensitive because one ID was capitalized and one wasn't. And that kind of get feedback, correct itself method is exactly how a human data engineer would work. Nobody would go blind all the way. And it allows it to kind of chug away at a problem and keep trying, sometimes with human correction, sometimes just leave it, let it go going, and most of the time builds out what you're looking to. But yeah, getting feedback and correcting is key to making the system robust.
So moving on to one of the foundations of the AI agentic architecture of tomorrow for data engineering, something that is very important is the semantic understanding of the data. So you saw some of the internals, like the gears that are inside of Maia. If we step back a little bit, you can see Maia as a translator. Maia translates the language of the business into the data pipeline language. So in order to do so, Maia needs to understand very well what are the concepts, the terms, the functional domain of the customer. And that's going to give the guarantee that anytime a pipeline has to be built, Maia picks the relevant tables, the relevant data assets in order to nail the user request. So Maia has been built with a semantic layer. We think it's a critical piece in an agentic data engineering tool so that it can really translate the words of the business into the technical representation that you would see on the pipeline.
There's an interesting footnote here as well for those who are keen on generative AI. That data pipeline language, when we started, we didn't think the large language model would be able to read it because it's proprietary to us. It's our own YAML format. There have been no blogs, nothing outside of the company ever shared. We knew that ChatGPT and all the other models had had plenty of exposure to Python, SQL, endless Git repos and blogs, but this was very, very proprietary. But because we designed that language to be relatively simple and human readable, it became very machine readable and machine editable. And I think that'll probably be the case in a lot of other scenarios where they're good at adapting to easy to understand high level languages. And that's been the key to our success here.
And there's another benefit. It goes both ways. So we talked about translating the language of the business into the language of the pipeline, but Maia can go the other way around. So for instance, it can translate a technical pipeline into business literacy. And if you think about it, it's a great way to empower a bit more the business users when it comes to understanding exactly how a pipeline is integrating data using the words of the business and something that will be meaningful for people who might not be necessarily technical savvy.
Yeah. And that brings us on to our next kind of challenge. I'm sure all of us in the data sphere have faced this one. Our chief financial officer here accidentally asked 2 analysts for the same piece of work. The trouble is, one has come back with a report that is lovely, green, up and to the right. The other is crashing down, doing terribly, and it's supposed to be showing the same thing. We've run into this many a time with a human, that there are slight differences in the interpretation of business terminology or similar that lead to what I call an apples to oranges conversation. They're not really reporting on the same thing, and the gotchas are often quite subtle. Let's say I ask somebody to get me a count of how many customers we have as a company. Sounds obvious, right? Find the customer table easy. But there's probably subtle gradations about at what point does a trial or free trial or prospective a proof of concept customer become counted as an actual customer. There's probably some data point or test we've got for that. Likewise, at what point do they consider leaving? Some of our customers are on a pay-go basis. We've got their payment details. When they use us, they get charged. They use us maybe about once a month, but they haven't run anything in 5 weeks. Are they still a customer or not? Again, subtle definitions that probably exist in every company. Getting to the bottom of that in a couple of pipelines requires the ability to translate that technical language back into business language, compare the 2 pipelines, and or interpret it through what we refer to as the semantic layer that actually captures a lot of those business definitions. And be able to say, here's the difference, here's why the two reports have been handed to the CFO by different people don't match up. It's not that somebody screwed up, it's just they were actually reporting different things, and trying to catch that subtlety is a huge amount of time saving, a huge amount of power.
And again, let's focus a little bit on how we build that semantic knowledge and pretty much the understanding of the business of the customer. So there are multiple sources of information that we have to leverage in order to create that semantic layer and build up that business knowledge that's going to be so critical when it comes to putting together relevant data pipelines. That information is spread all over the information system. If you think about the sources of semantics that you would have in a data integration project, you could think about, for instance, the technical metadata that you have in your warehouse. Let's say, for instance, that Sam's company is using Snowflake. There's a lot of metadata that we could already start to leverage in order to better understand the data. Think about the comments that you would have on the tables and the columns. Think about the tagging that could be done. Think also about the statistics and everything that's related to the usage and the popularity of the data assets that are used in Sam's company. It's very relevant information to know what is the relevant piece of information that should be brought whenever we talk about the concept of a customer. But in Sam's company, big enterprise, multinational company, there's also information that is in a data catalog where there's a lot of business literacy that Maia could leverage. Because remember, Maia speaks the language of the business. And good news, whenever there's business literacy that could help Maia to better understand the business, we have a way to get access to it and make it available to Maia. Also, we're starting to see the new generations of semantic layers on the data platforms. Think about Cortex Analyst on Snowflake. Think about the Unity catalog on Databricks. Lots of metadata that we can leverage in order to bring even more information so that Maia can build good pipelines. And last but not least, and sometimes it's information that is overlooked, think about all the unstructured data that you have in your companies. Yeah. Here I'm talking about wikis, PowerPoint presentations, could be data that you've been sharing on Slack, some of the knowledge that is sometimes less structured, but as valuable when it comes to understanding exactly what is a customer, what is churn. So in a semantic layer, we're striving to get access to those sources and ensure that Maia can take a benefit of all of them so that it better understands the business.
I mean, those unstructured sources could be as simple as the transcript of a Zoom call where Sam introduced her new junior intern to the team and said, here's the main tables I work with, here's the core reports, and spent half an hour walking that person through. You can transcribe that, turn it to text. That's perfectly good fodder to enrich and populate a semantic layer. Equally, it could be the wikis created the last time there was an effort to catalog and document. Maybe it's 6 months old, maybe it's 12 months old, but it's still useful input. It's still useful fodder compared to not having any clues at all as to what's going on. Yeah.
And it's time for a lunch break, I guess.
Time for lunch break. Okay. As you're getting to know Sam right now, she's not a lady who likes to skip her lunch or have it interrupted by work. But she's got a little bit of work to do. There's messy data coming through. It looks like a bunch of junk. She suspects one of her colleagues' cats may have been all over a keyboard. Obviously, this is popping up. How do we deal with it? Well, we've given Maia quite a lot of levers to investigate for data quality and test for data quality. And obviously, with a tool like this, it's quite, with Maia's ability to build pipelines, you can then match those up. You get examples of where there are problems, and that will prompt Maia to suggest pipelines that remediate that issue, that start to correct the data or trap for it, possibly impute missing values if you're getting in that space. But otherwise, take corrective action in various ways. A lot of this is quite detailed, quite painstaking. Again, a really good use case for letting AI do the heavy lifting for you.
And that's where data quality is so critical. There are two big things here. When it comes to bringing future data engineering you cannot think about it without bringing data quality capabilities. So that's why Maia has the ability to understand the data. Maia can sample the data, of course, in a very secure fashion and always asking the user's consent, but that's the way to start assessing the level of data quality of the assets that need to be worked with. And by assessing the level of data quality, Maia is going to be able to spot what would be the necessary fixes, the data quality curation steps that would be needed in order to bring, at the end, business-ready data. So Maia has the ability to not only spot the defects that you would have in a data set, but also help them fix them, because at the end of the day, if you want to build a relevant pipeline, you need to ensure that you take into account all the data quality problems. Otherwise, you're going to get runtime exceptions.
Yeah. Again, the LLMs are really good at writing regex expressions and case statements for us, those sort of things that with enough painstaking effort you can use, but here, super helpful to helping clean stuff up. So let's move on in the day. Enter Sam's least favorite person, Tom. Tom is young, he's keen, he's full of enthusiasm. I'm sure we've all got a Tom in our organization. The trouble is, every time Tom has a new idea for a report that he pitches to his execs, he needs the data engineering team to get that data source for him. And it becomes yet another object that's bottleneck with the data engineering team, another thing on Sam's to-do list. It's not their priorities, it's not big value, but because of Tom's bright idea, their backlog is slowing down again. Fortunately, if we've got a tool that simplifies the exercise of data engineering for simple low-level tasks, maybe adding a new API connection or similar, Tom can go and get his own data and stop bothering the data engineering department, because what the AI assistant's doing is it's lifted everybody's technical capability in this space up a notch. The tasks that previously would have needed admittedly an entry-level data engineer now can be done by a business analyst. That junior data engineer can be doing the work of a senior, and that senior can be operating at a really cutting-edge level. How does Maia help him get set up?
Easy. That's an easy task for Maia. All you have to do is to take the URL of the documentation of the API that you need to integrate to, and Maia is going to discover all the endpoints, all the operations that are related to that documentation. So in a nutshell, Maia is going to build a new connector for you. I'm a former data engineer. I remember the days where I would have to code my own, Python connector because I had a new source to integrate and there was no off-the-shelf connector. Problem solved. Maia, in a few seconds, can get access to the data, create a connector that's going to be reusable, and Sam is going to be able also to collaborate with the team and share that connector with the rest of the data engineering team.
Yeah. Cool. So, other ways in which LLM's ability to read is helpful. So dear Harold retired last week. He loved writing stuff. He loved hand coding. The only thing he didn't like writing was comments and documentation. So Sam has a challenging opportunity to modernize Tom's old scripts, Harold's old scripts, which half the company's depending, converting them from their legacy formats. There's a bunch of Ultrix, there's a bunch of Informatica. There's probably have some COBOL if you could. But they're all things that we want to get consolidated on one platform. Fortunately, we can leverage the LLM's ability to read as much as ability to write. It can understand the pseudocode intent of what was in those old scripts and then reformat them into our data pipeline language, which can be visualized within the graphical pipelines.
Yep. I said earlier on that Maia speaks the language of the business. Actually, Maia can do more than that. Maia is actually polyglot, can actually speak the language of DBT, SQL, Python, Alteryx, Talent, you name it. And back to that good old Harold, there's a big legacy that we could convert into Matillion pipelines. So that's what Maia is going to help with. Look at the existing assets and accelerate the conversion of those pipelines into the new standard, which is for Sam, the Matillion pipelines.
Yeah.
That's a great way to centralize data integration, and it's also a chance to ensure that best practices, norms, and standards are enforced. So maybe it's going to help clean some of the mess that was left by that good old Harold.
Yeah, And it's not just different technical languages. We discovered, I have to really admit, completely by accident, that because of the LLM's ability to generally comprehend language, they're polyglot enough to take instruction in French, German, Japanese, and we've got active customers using them in their native language quite happily, even though we've done no kind of localization view. So, building that out in terms of what that translation looks like. So the end of Sam's day. Now this is probably the one that's a little more futuristic, but Sam is tight on timekeeping, as we're aspiring to be here. Where we see the next steps for this is obviously in the realm of A2A and MCP, where probably as many of the visualization and dashboarding vendors out there are starting to look at their own agentic systems. We see a road where you're interacting with your dashboarding vendor's system agent, and it realizes it needs more data to fill the request that the user has given. Maia can receive those requests via MCP, and then translate that to a data pipeline it can fulfill, build that transformation out, make the data available. Equally, it could be a chat with your data style model. But in that scenario, the advantage Maia's providing is by creating pipelines in a Git-controlled environment, you've got an audit trail. You can check its work. It's not just ChatGPT coming up with a number. You can see how the numbers were generated, going back to our finance director's report. We can actually go and check the workings and the logic and understand what's come out of it and replicate it.
And that's a future that's not that far away from us. If you think about it, MCP, A2A are new standards that are starting to emerge. And you could think about how from an analytics tool, in a few months, you're going to be able to leverage all the agentic capabilities of a data integration platform. From Tableau, from ThoughtSpot, have the ability to start a chat and have Tableau or ThoughtSpot leverage Maia and help pull the data, for instance, that is not available in the warehouse. So the moral of the story we have today is that it's all about productivity, and that's what's been driving our roadmap so far. Today, we've been talking about the future life of a data engineer. Actually, we're not that far away from the future life.
This is the life tomorrow. Most of the things you saw in those slides are live and generally available now. The A2A piece, a little bit in the future. The semantic layer stuff is a little basic right now. But all the other pieces we've been talking about are available and working right now. So please do come and take a demo, see what we've got, and hopefully we've given you a little bit of a glimpse of what Gen AI is doing to the data engineer's career in the future and how it enables them to scale, get on top of their work, get on top of all those legacy code bases. And hopefully that's given you an entertaining glimpse of what we think is possible.
Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you.